Hello students, I am Dr. Saleha Jamal, Faculty Department of Geography, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. So here again with the course Climate Change, Vulnerability and Adaptation. And today's topic of discussion is Climate Change and Man-Nature Interaction. So let us start the class without any delay. So when we talk about the man-nature interaction, we know that this interaction is a both-way interaction, means man impacts the nature and nature impacts the man. There are several approaches to study the man-nature relationships. You must have studied also, just like we can talk about the determinism, environmental determinism, that where the environment controls the human being, means environment is more powerful than the human beings, controls the lifestyle, the behavior and even the livelihood, overall the economy, the society, the communities of all human beings. And another approach to study this we can say man-nature relationship is possibilism, where it states that environment provides us with various possibilities and we the human beings are the judge of those possibilities, how to use these possibilities. And there was another most common approach, that is new determinism, means stop and go relationship, means environment provides possibilities under certain limits and we human being, if we exceed those limits, then the repercussions are obvious. So how the people interact with the environment and the relationship between the humans and nature, we know that is changing dramatically through time. If we see the ancient time, mostly when the ancient people, the early men who were living in the forested areas, they were mostly dependent upon the whole soul, upon the resources from the environment. For example, for food, they used to take the roots, fruits and even hunt animals. For the clothing, they generally used to hunt animals and use their skins for their clothes and even the large leaves for their shelters. They use tree tops or the caves, means their whole soul dependent upon the environment. But when the nomadic life changed to somewhat we can say sedentary or permanent life after the domestication of the plants, then we have seen certain changes. The evolution of the fire, that also, then we can say there are different ages, iron age, we can say bronze age, etc. Means with the time lots of development took place, and with the development the relationship between the man and environment also changed dramatically. Now it has changed so much that it has overall it is impacting the ecosystems, and we know that the several ecosystems are already under a lot of stress. The influence of this phenomena can be seen in multiple domains, such like changes in the cultural practices, changes in the livelihoods in order to have a proper and sustainable resource availability, and also lots of changes we are seeing in terms of the environment, mostly proceeding towards the environmental damage. So we can say the man and nature is sharing both way relationship, or it can be more properly, it can sound that it has a symbiotic relationship. Man depends upon nature and it changes also nature in their own way for their use, and also the nature also, the environment also impacts human being and control human beings in several ways. Here this is a very we can say good diagram which explains the interaction between the climate change, people and the nature. If we see, you can find here the nature provides contributions to the people, means non-climate contributions if you see include food, energy, medicine, spiritual and cultural identity and resilience to floods and storms. These are all we can say nature provides contribution to the people. Now, how the climate change impacts people? If we see existing impacts and future risk includes, we know as the temperature is rising, already we have seen in previous lectures the impacts of warming and the impacts of global warming, that is melting ice, sea level rise, worsened extreme weather events, land degradation, reduced food security. These are all how the climate change is affecting the people. The human activities is driving towards the natural laws. Maybe the non-climatic stressors, if we take, that may include habitat destruction, over exploitation of the resources, and even the pollution in several ways. But nature laws drives to climate change. Overall, it is a somewhat, we can say, feedback formation of the loop. Feedback loop is formed. Nature also drives towards the climate change. How it drives towards the climate change? With the change of the land use, land cover means changing the natural land covers into the built up for various purposes, mainly the conversion of natural grasslands, forest, wetlands. What it does, it releases again the stored carbon dioxides in its ecosystem. So how this natural laws drivers to climate change? As we know that nature helps to regulate the climate in various ways. For example, we know the ice sheets, the Arctic and the Antarctic ice, they or snow, they reflect sunlight. Ocean on the other hand side, they observe heat. Once on one side, these ice sheets and the ice cover reflects sunlight. On the other hand, these ocean absorb heat. Oceans and plants draw carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. How these all system that regulates the climate of this planet Earth. So on one hand, the climate change drives natural laws. If you see, it has the direct impact and even can worsen the other stressors, like it include higher temperature, worse extreme events, sea level rise. Means climate change drives nature loss. And on the other hand, human activities drive climate change. How the human activities drive climate change? We have also studied in previous lectures. There are various sources through which carbon dioxide is emitted in the atmosphere by the we can say industrial activities. Most prominent is burning of the fossil fuels, conversion of natural ecosystem, and even the high greenhouse gas agricultural system. So these are how we can say how human activities drive climate change. So overall, through this diagram, you can understand how the man nature is related to each other in terms of the climate change. On one hand, the nature, the environment regulates the climate. On the other hand, climate change drives various natural losses. And on the other hand, the human activities is driving the climate change. So what should be done? There should be somehow we can take nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions can contribute to climate change mitigation, resilience and adaptation with co-benefits for the future. If we include the example, there are ecosystem-based adaptation, sustainable land management, halting nature ecosystem conversion. This is all we can say nature-based solutions, means taking we can say fewer part but still controlling the natural laws, we can say the climate drivers natural laws. But we can also take a very active role where people can protect and restore nature. For example, through protected areas, through ecosystem restoration, rewilding, for example, afforestation, reforestation, we can say these all can how people can protect and restore nature. So, in short, we can say the man and nature are intertwined. Means we cannot study environment or nature in isolation. As we know, the human beings are the integral part of the nature. So we have to study both in integration as a whole, man and nature both. So what are the ways in which climate change is impacting this human nature relationships? There are several ways. One by one we are going to discuss in this class. For example, If we take the climate change impacts man-nature relationship in terms, you can see disruption of various ecosystems and the biodiversity. Climate change, we know it is nowadays destabilizing the natural ecosystem, leading to the loss of the biodiversity, and not only the loss of the biodiversity, but it is also changing the balance of interactions between the humans and the environment. For example, you can take species extinction and the habitat loss, because we know various habitat with the climate change are becoming uninhabitable, maybe due to the rise in temperature, maybe due to the sea level rise, flooding, drought condition, changing patterns of the precipitation, various extreme weather events like storms, hurricanes, etc. These all events, these are causing the migration and even the extinction of the species. So, better to understand, you just view this diagram, how the climate change and biodiversity, we can say sort of extinction, or we can say migration in biodiversity, we can see. What biodiversity is about? Biodiversity is about the living things we are talking about. Diversity, variation in the living things, mainly with relationship to each other we are talking about. This may include the species, the ecosystem, and all the ecological processes from which they are part with. Means the living beings are the part of a particular habitat. So, species are included under the biodiversity, the ecosystem, whole ecosystem of which these species are part, and even all the ecological processes which are taking part. So, mainly we have to consider species, ecosystem and ecological processes. If we found how in several ways this climate change is impacting this man-nature relationship, here you can see the earlier arrival of the spring that may change the life cycle of various plants that provides food and habitats to the other species. Means if that thing changes, it will impact the species or the animals on which they are dependent. So many species won't be able to adapt quickly enough to the changing environment. So this is one of the problem of the species. Another thing what we have seen through the anthropogenic activities, lots of habitat fragmentation is taking place. Means when natural landscapes are broken by the developmental processes, maybe such as through the river dams, or we can say highways, bridges, what this interrupts the migration routes of the various species. Means habitat fragmentation generally it restricts and even it disturbs the migration routes of various species, thus impacting the biodiversity. Not only is this, there are several, we can say, phenological mismatches you can see here, which happen when the life cycle of dependent species change and no longer match up. For example, migratory species arrive at site after their prey has passed. Means this is shift of weather conditions, shift of climatic condition. When the migratory species, generally the birds, arrive at a place that may observe the shift of the prey already passed from that place of their arrival. So another, we can say, the impact here, you can see even the extreme storms and the rising sea level can cause the coastal squeeze. We know, means it disturbs the coastal ecosystem. For example, the mangrove ecosystem, the wetland ecosystem. Not only this, even the climate change lead to competition for resources among the species, as well as bigger and more frequent infestation of the outbreaks. Even the hybridization can take place in the same species. For example, mixing of different but similar species, that is called, we can say, hybridization, and that can drive rare species to the extinction, or even it can also have the positive impact in terms of the increasing the adaptability. So hybridization, many times it has the negative impact in the, for example, in the extinction of the rare species, and on the other hand, even it can increase the adaptability of the different species. So these are the few of the, we can say, how the climate change and biodiversity relation can be seen. We know that overall human food system, agriculture and the local economies these all things are impacted by the climate. Even the extinction of the species, especially those are offer vital ecological services, they are also impacted with the climate change. Another example you can take here, shifts in the species distribution, because many species in search of the better condition, in search of the better supplies of the resources, water, prey, food, they used to migrate from one place to another, which modifies this natural ecosystem and even impacts the human endeavors, mainly who rely on the stable ecosystem. If the ecosystem itself destabilizes, then the human beings who are dependent on those ecosystem, those will be also impacted, such as in the case of fishing activities. If some sort of imbalance or destabilization can be seen in terms of the fishing activities, or some shift in the fishing grounds is being observed, then for sure the fishermen, the communities who are dependent upon the fishing activity, that will be impacted. Not only this, similar is the case with the farmers, the people related with the agricultural activities. Secondly, how climate change can impact, that is the natural resource depletion and the scarcity. Here we have taken, here we will take the example of some of the resources. For example, water scarcity. We know the prevailing climatic changes is leading towards the changing pattern of the rainfall, the precipitation that is, or even it also leads to the prolonged droughts in various regions of the world. Not only this, the rate of the glacier melting has increased. Thus, these all things are impacting the availability of fresh water supply to the people. Not only this, it also affects overall water supply, whether we talk about household water supply or even for the economic sectors, that is industries, agriculture, etc. These water scarcity can even lead to social unrest, conflicts among the region. Not only this, it can also lead to economic instability in the regions which heavily rely on rivers fed by the glaciers, such as here you can quote example of South Asia. This diagram explains very much beautifully about the water scarcity, which results from the what is water scarcity? Simply, it results from the insufficient available fresh water resources in order to meet the human need or human demand overall, we can say. And mostly it is found in the drought prone areas, semi-arid and arid lands, where we can say where the evaporation exceeds precipitation. If we see data, we have different types of water scarcity. Already we have discussed in previous lecture. We have the economic water scarcity, physical water scarcity. Economic water scarcity is mainly due to the lack of infrastructure in general, to the poor water management of the resources. With the economic scarcity, if we see the data, nearly 1.6 billion people are facing economic water scarcity. On the other hand, if we talk about the physical water scarcity, that occurs when the use of water resources outpaces the supply. And when we see the data, 1.2 billion people live in the areas of physical water scarcity. If we see the regions impacted by the economic scarcity, they are Sao Paulo, Bengaluru, Moscow, Jakarta, Beijing, Cairo, Tokyo, Miami, London, Istanbul, Mexico, and many more. I have taken here few of the example. So overall, we have already discussed about the freshwater distribution on this planet Earth, and also if we take the global sum of all water withdrawals, mainly we will see 19% is withdrawn by the industries, 11% by the municipal authorities, and 70% by the agricultural activities. And in all this sector, there are heavy increase of the pollution. Whether the pollution regarding the heavy metals and the other chemicals we are talking about, sewage, no proper disposal of the sewage, and even the agrochemical runoff and the livestock waste. How this water scarcity is impacting the human being. So, if we see the changes in the weather patterns due to the global warming, mainly impacting the human being, or overall we can say man-nature relationship, there is probability of increasing the extreme weather events. If we divide it into three parts, means less extreme cold weather events if we see, or if we see overall the average or more extreme hot weather events, we observe if there is shift in the climate, means increase in the average temperature. This you can see, this is the current climate, and if we talk about this one is the increase in the average temperature. If such increase takes place, what we observe, there is more hot weather. You can see here this increasing pattern of more hot weather as compared to this. Here you can see there is increasing pattern of more hot weather, and not only this, more extreme events. This is what more extreme events, more extreme hot weather events will increase. So it is but obvious, if there is a change in the climate, mainly as we know we are proceeding towards the global warming, so increase in the average temperature will lead to more extreme hot weather and extreme weather events like hurricanes, storms, and we can say sea level rise, etc. On the other hand, if we visualize this population growth, global population growth, and match it with water withdrawal over time, you can see here the yellow color which shows the global population growth. See, consistently it is increasing at a very higher rate. On the other hand side, if the global population will increase, certainly the demand for water will increase, means here this also you can see the withdrawal is increasing, and it is expected that by 2025 half of the world population will be living in the water stressed areas. So this is the great concern of the present time in the era of climate change. Another example we will take about the decline in the agricultural productivity, because we are talking in relation with the climate change, and we know that agriculture is a climate sensitive sector, economic sector, means it is mostly dependent upon the climatic factors like temperature, precipitation, etc. So overall, any change in these parameters will lead to changes in the cropping pattern, it will lead to decline in the productivity, it will also destroy soil health, and overall it will disrupt the food production system, leading to the food shortages in various regions, and various climatic events, the extreme weather events also impacts the productivity. For example, droughts, it will decrease, or many times the whole crop failure occurs due to the drought. Floods destroy the crops, and mainly the heat waves also, these destroy the soils, ultimately leading to the food shortage, and food insecurity is faced by many of the nation. Another example here, we can take increased frequency of weather events. Through several data in previous lectures also we have seen there has been increase in the frequency of the various events. Particularly we have seen in terms of the flooding events that have increased a lot, hurricanes have increased a lot, storm surges, drought spells that have increased. So these are have increase their frequency in this era of climate change. If we talk about the flood, storms, hurricanes, the rising sea levels, and even the thermal expansion of the seawater or warmer ocean temperature, they generally intensify the storms and the hurricanes, which leads to the coastal destruction, coastal ecosystem destruction, overall property devastation, and even the population displacement. So these events carry the potential to destroy the ecosystem. For example, already we have given, for example, here we can take the mangrove ecosystem, wetland ecosystem. Generally these type of ecosystem, they serve barriers against the flooding and lower the resilience of human and environmental system. If they are destroyed, then their vulnerability of these overall coastal communities towards the climate change will increase. Already we have discussed about the diagram. This how a small shift makes a big difference, means previous climates and now. If the some average warming or temperature increases, you can say this shift can lead to more hot weather, and again it can lead to extreme hot weather. So small shifts can lead to big difference. Again, similar is the case with the wildfires. If we discuss about the wildfires, the long drought spells, dry condition, they are making various arid and semi-arid regions more prone to the wildfire. Certainly, they decimate forest, agricultural land, and even the human population. So, on the other hand, a sort of feedback loop is formed because loss of vegetation affects water also, the air quality also, and the ecosystem capacity to store carbon. On one hand, the loss of these forests that leads to deterioration in the water quality, air quality, overall it reduces the ecosystem capacity to store carbon, means more carbon in the atmosphere, more temperature rise, increased in temperature we can observe, that will again lead to more drought spells or even the dry conditions leading to the more wildfires. So a sort of feedback loop is formed if we see. If we see towards the interaction between the man nature, then the climate change is also impacting the human settlement and the migration, because various areas with the change of climate change are becoming less habitable, leading to the shifts and migration in the settlements in the various regions of the world. Mainly, if we talk about the climate induced migration, the most prominent migration is observed from the coastal areas, mainly due to the sea level rise. If we see another migration which is very much prominent, is also found from the arid and the semi-arid areas due to the desertification and resource scarcity, especially in the vulnerable locations like low level coastal regions. If we are talking about the coastal vulnerability, and if you are talking about the drought prone areas, Africa and South Asia, you can take the example. Not only this climate induced migration leads to the conflicts over the land, water and employment, because mostly the people are leaving their own places due to the vulnerable conditions to the places of better resources and better job opportunities. So it will put pressure on the place of their arrival. We have seen mostly the movement is towards the cities, mainly the metropolitan areas, and the natural resources in these regions are already under stress. Here you can see a temporary settlement on the outskirts of the city of Kismayo for families displaced by the prolonged drought in Somalia. See how this temporary settlement they are living with for better resources, for better job opportunities. They will move to some other places. Not only this, the urbanization and infrastructure stress is also being observed. What I have said already, due to the climatic change, migration is taking place, and most of the migration is taking place from the coastal areas, or we can say drought prone areas, desertification, where the desertification is increasing from those areas. Even extreme weather phenomena like heat waves, storms, floods, that are having a growing effect on the cities, putting pressure on the infrastructure, facilities and amenities of the cities, because most of the migration is taking place towards the cities. In response, what the urban planners are doing, they are strengthening the bond between the human settlements and the natural world. These strengthening the bond of the human settlement and the natural world, they can proceed in various ways, maybe by increasing the green and blue infrastructure such as parks, floodplains, and to lessen the impact of the climate change, but rate of migration, rate of increase of population in the urban areas is not at the same rate in which the amenities and facilities of these areas are increasing. So lots of problem is being observed in these areas. Not only this, there are the cultural and socio-economic shifts have already been observed. For example, loss of traditional knowledge and practices have seen because climate change is causing by the traditional means. If we see, means interacting with the environment, like with certain conventional farming practices, fishing practices, hunting, they are being disrupted in many rural and indigenous communities by the climate change. Even the knowledge system that have guided sustainable interactions with the environment for the generations to generations are in danger of being lost due to the ecological changes, even which could result in the loss of cultural legacy and identity. So on one hand, here you can see how much in a traditional practice we can say they are practicing a very good agriculture, but due to the climate change that has already changed. See the how much cracks you can see due to the droughts and spell on one hand. On the other hand, some other type of agriculture system is being observed. Climate change affects agriculture a lot because it is one of the climate sensitive economy. Various shifts in the livelihoods have been also observed, particularly which the livelihoods which are climate sensitive. We have already talked about the agriculture, the fishing, forestry, and even tourism. These all sectors are the climate sensitive. Mainly, they depend upon the natural sources, so they are highly impacted by the climate change. Changes in the fishing population may impact the fishermen. Similarly, changes in the certain climatic parameters like temperature, or we can say precipitation pattern, that will impact the farmers. Not only this, the tourism sector is also impacted and it might need to adjust to the changing tourism destination. So lots of shifts in livelihoods also have been observed. Not only this, human responses to environmental degradation with the change of climate, we have seen our response towards the environment has also been changed. Now we are talking about the sustainable environment. We are talking about the sustainability. We are talking about the conservation, preservation, restoration, because seeing the so many repercussions of the climate change. So in order to protect not only the our overall environment with its ecosystem, biodiversity, and in order to fortify the ecosystem, not only governments but the local participation is needed, community participation, non-governmental organization, they all are endorsing the conservation initiatives in terms of the reforestation, afforestation, wetland restoration. Through these improvement, natural carbon sinks like forest, even the project assists to reduce the climate change, because if we increase the natural carbon sink through the forestation, reforestation, through the wetland conservation, certainly it will reduce the impact of the climate change. Through the response towards the nature have also been shifted. We can visualize it through the sustainable practices and technology. Various environmental friendly technologies nowadays it is used in order to reduce the impacts of the climate change. Now we are shifting towards more environment friendly energies, renewable energy sources like wind energy, we can say sun energy, thermal energy, and sustainable we are shifting towards the sustainable farming methods. Even we are shifting towards the precision farming, more tailored farming practices, green building techniques, etc. This is what we can say how our response towards the environment has changed with the change of the climate. So this is one another types of relationship shift we have observed. Now we are talking about, and even we are practicing afforestation, reforestation. We are talking about to conserve the green spaces, the blue spaces, in order to reduce the impacts of the climate change. Because there was an era, there was an age where we were trying to develop our region. We are in the phase of the development. We were talking and development in that era, that only meant the economic development by exploiting the resources of the different regions. That exploitation proceeded towards the over exploitation, we can say. Then that led to the pollution. Then the time came with the lots of repercussions of this climate change. We felt the need of that this development should take place in terms of the sustainable development. So now we are talking about the sustainability. So overall, we have to visualize the feedback loops between the humans and the natures, because we know deforestation on one hand that is working as a carbon sink. They absorb carbon from the atmosphere, but on the other hand it leads to the more emissions of the carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, which will lead to global warming. Overall climate change means a feedback loop is formed. So this loop is to be, we have to see how to break this loop, and we have to conserve our environment. So the earth's ability to absorb the carbon is mainly diminished by the deforestation, maybe through the urbanization, industrialization, or changing the land use cover for various purposes, which is raising the carbon dioxide levels. So as a result, we know the temperature is increasing, the ecosystem are becoming day by day more fragile. Only by protecting, conserving these green cover and also proceeding towards the afforestation and reforestation can control the impacts of these carbon dioxide. This figure predicts in a very pertinent manner how huge carbon footprint of tropical deforestation you can see, in which China is at the top. This is mainly the estimated annual carbon dioxide equivalent emission in GT per year, that is the gigaton per year, where the China, even you see United States. Overall tropical tree cover loss you can see 5.3 gigaton per year, which is a huge tropical tree cover loss. European Union, India, Russia, these are all huge carbon footprint of tropical deforestation. You can visualize very nicely from this diagram. Not only this, even the permafrost, thawing of the permafrost, that releases the methane, that is again greenhouse gas, that will lead to increase in the carbon dioxide or carbon emissions in the atmosphere. We have also, during the interactions, we have also seen psychological and ethical dimension changing. Eco anxiety and mental health is also impacted, because nowadays what we have seen, anxiety levels mainly in the youth are rising. Why? Due to the growing knowledge of the environmental deterioration, and even about growing knowledge of unpredictable nature of climate related calamities that may take place in this era of climate change. And this anxiety levels are rising mainly among the youngsters. Here you can see how, due to this awareness and we can say knowledge regarding the unpredictable calamities that may cause lots of loss of property and people due to the climate change, here you can, this awareness leads to lots of protest from the youth side. Overall, environment ethics and its stewardships, that also has been impacted. Ethical obligations to preserve the environment is emerging as the climate change is proceeding at a very higher rate. We can see a lot of changes from the school level to the university level. We have seen movements that prioritize the health of the earth together with the human well-being are gaining traction day by day in this era of the climate change, and which is now, it is not the choice, but it is now the compulsory obligation in order to save our earth, save the life on the earth. Thank you. That's all for today's lecture. Have a nice day.